Hello and welcome to Soupy Story Time. I'm here in a very cozy Christmassy setting to continue the story of Prince Pwyll of Dyfed, who made a bargain with the Lord of the Underworld to swap places for a year, and strangely enough, no one had any problems with this. The Queen of the Underworld noticed that her husband suddenly was facing away from her in bed every night for a year, and then definitely noticed when her husband came back and was very chatty, and seemingly people in the world of the living, Pwyll's domain, had no problem either. They actually quite liked the governance that was brought to them. So the swap went well, and I shared that in part 1 a couple of years ago now, and we shall continue with part 2. As ever, I'm reading from Tales from the Mabinogion by Gwyn Thomas and Kevin Crossley Holland. Fantastic edition, illustrated by the magnificent Margaret Jones. So I love this book, and this is a book that I've been reading ever since I was a kid. This was in my school library, so I've had this book with me pretty much my entire life. Anyway, we shall continue. Pwyll has just been called King of the Other World. Now, once upon a time, Pwyll was in Arberth, one of his chief courts. A feast had been prepared, and many people were with him there. After the first sitting had been eaten, Pwyll got up and stretched his legs, and he walked towards the top of a hill above the court, called the Throne of Arberth. "My lord," said one of his courtiers, "the remarkable thing about the throne is that if a nobleman once sits on it, he'll not be able to leave without one of two things happening. Either he'll be injured and hurt, or he'll see a wonder to behold." "I'm not afraid of being injured and hurt amongst as many people as this," said Pwyll, "but it would please me greatly to see a wonder. I'll go and sit on the throne." Well, I think something's going to happen. So Pwyll went and to sit on the throne, and as everyone was sitting there, they saw a woman riding a grey-white horse, many hands high, a woman wearing silk coloured as bright as gold. She was coming along the road that passed by the throne. The horse seemed to move quite slowly, without varying its speed, until it was almost opposite the throne. "Ah," said Pwyll, "do any of you recognise this horsewoman?" "No, my lord," they said. "I want someone to go to meet her and find out who she is," he said. So a man got up and stepped forward, but as he came to meet her, she went past him. He pursued her as quickly as any man could on foot, but the greater his haste, the further she was from him. And when the man realised it was not worth his chasing after her all across the county, he returned to Pwyll and said to him, "My lord, it's no use anyone on foot pursuing her." "Is that so?" said Pwyll. Now, to be fair, Pwyll should know that horses are quicker than people, shouldn't he? Okay. "Go to the court then," he said, "and take the fastest horse you know of, and gallop after her." The man took the fastest horse, and off he went. He reached a level plain and spurred on his horse, but the harder he spurred the horse, the further she was from him. Yet the woman still moved at the same unvarying speed she had moved at before. His horse began to slow down, presumably because it was tired, and when he realised this horse was tired of galloping, there you go, he returned to the place where Pwyll was. "My lord," he said, "it's no use anyone going after that lady. I don't know of a faster horse in the kingdom, than this one, but even so, it was not fast enough. It was not worth my pursuing her. Is that how it is? Said Pwyll. There's something magic here. We'll go back to the court. And back to the court they went. And so the day passed. The next day they got up and spent the day in the usual way until it was time to go and eat. After the first sitting, Pwyll said, "Now then, those of you who were there yesterday can come to the top of the throne with me again. And you," he said to one of his young men, "bring with you the fastest horse that you know of from the field." So the young man did just that. Off they went to the throne, and the horse went with them. While they were sitting, they saw a woman on the same horse, wearing the same dress, coming along the same road. "Here's the same horsewoman as yesterday," said Pwyll. "Be ready, lad. Prepare yourself to find out who she is." "My lord," he said, "I'll do it gladly." And that horsewoman came up opposite them. The young man mounted his horse, but before he had settled himself properly into the saddle, she had gone past, so that there was some distance yet between them. But she was moving no more quickly than she had been the previous day. So the young man let his horse amble, and was quite confident that he would catch up with the horsewoman. He was wrong. So then he let his horse have its head and quickened into the gallop. But he drew no closer to her than as if his horse were walking. The more he whipped his horse, the further he was from the horsewoman. And so, when the young man realized that there was no use in pursuing her, he came back to the place where Pwyll was. "My lord," he said, "you saw that this horse galloped as fast as he could." "I saw it was no use you pursuing her," said Pwyll. "But as God my witness, that horsewoman must have some business with someone here, if only she were not so obstinate. We'll go back to court." So they returned to court, and spent that evening singing and feasting until everyone was well contented. And the next day they whiled away the hours until it was time to go and eat. After eating, Pwyll said, "Where are those people who were at the top of the throne yesterday?" "Here we are," they all cried out. "We'll go to the throne again," he said. "And you," he said to his ostler, "saddle my horse carefully and bring it to the road, and bring my spurs with you." And the ostler did just that. So they climbed and sat on the throne. They were not there long before they saw the horsewoman as before come along the same road as before, looking the same and moving the same. "Now, lad," said Pwyll, "I can see the horsewoman. Bring me my horse." No sooner had Pwyll mounted than the horsewoman rode past him. Pwyll turned after her and gave his prancing horse its head. He thought he would catch her on the second or third bound, but he was no nearer than when he had started. He forced his horse to go as fast as it could, but he realized it was useless to pursue her. Finally, in desperation, Pwyll called out, "Lady, for the sake of the man you love most, wait for me." "I'll wait gladly," she said, "and it would have been far better for the horse if you'd asked me this to start with." The girl drew her reins and lifted her veil and looked at Pwyll and began to talk with him. "My lady," said Pwyll, "where do you come from, and what is the purpose of your journey?" "To go about my business," she said, "and I'm very glad to see you." "Welcome to you," he said. And then Pwyll thought that the face of every girl and woman he'd ever seen was ugly compared to her face. "My lady," he said, "will you tell me about your business?" "Yes, of course," she said. "My most important business is to see you." "As far as I'm concerned," said Pwyll, "that's the best business you could have." "And will you tell me who you are?" "Yes, my lord," she said. "I am Rhiannon, daughter of Hevydd the Old, and I'm to be given to a man against my will. I've not accepted any husband until now because I'm in love with you, and I will not accept any other husband unless you reject me. I've come here to discover your answer. As God's my witness, said Pwyll. Here's my answer. If I had my choice of all the women and girls in the world, you would be my choice. Fine, she said. If that's what you will, arrange to meet me before I'm given to another man. The sooner the better for me, said Pwyll. Arrange this meeting wherever you will. I'll do that, my lord, she said. A year from this night, I'll arrange for a feast to be prepared for you in the high court of Hevydd the Old. Splendid, he said. I'll be there. My lord, she said, take care of yourself and remember to keep your word. I'm going now. They parted. And Pwyll returned to his soldiers and followers, and however much they asked about the girl, he would tell them nothing, and would change the subject. Finally, the year passed, and Pwyll prepared himself to go and meet Rhiannon. He went with 100 horsemen away to the court of Hevydd the Old. When he came to the court, he was welcomed warmly. Many people had gathered there. There was rejoicing, the feast was ready, and liberal gifts were given as he directed. Then the hall was prepared, and the company went to the tables. Hevydd the Old sat on one side of Pwyll and Rhiannon on the other. And everyone sat according to their rank. They ate and talked and enjoyed themselves. And at the beginning of the merrymaking, after the feast, a tall and regal young man walked into the hall. His hair was auburn, and he was dressed in silk. When he reached the dais, he greeted Pwyll and his friends. A royal welcome to you, friend, said Pwyll. Seat yourself. I won't sit, said the man. I've a request to make, and I must attend to it. Do that, and welcome, said Pwyll. Oh, said Rhiannon, why did you answer like that? Those were his words, my lady, said the man, and he has spoken them amongst noblemen. That is to say, witnesses who will attest to what was said. Friend, said Pwyll, what do you want? Tonight you're going to sleep with the woman I love more than anyone, said the man. I come to ask for her, and indeed for this wedding feast. Pwyll fell silent. There was nothing he could say. Be quiet as long as you will, said Rhiannon. No man was ever such a fool as you. My lady, he said, I didn't know who he was. This is the man to whom I've been given against my will, she said. He is Pwyll, son of Clyd, a wealthy man who has many soldiers. Since you've spoken as you did, give me to him, otherwise people will make fun of you. My lady, he said, what kind of answer is that? I'll never do that. Give me to him, she said, and I'll ensure he never has me. How? Asked Pwyll. I'll give you a small bag, she said. Keep it safely, and when he asks for the feast and all the wedding preparations, tell him they're not yours to give. Say that I have given this feast to the soldiers and the company. As for me, she said, I'll make an agreement with him to marry him exactly 1 year from tonight. Now at the end of the year, have this bag with you, and wait with your knights in the orchard, just up there. While he's in the middle of merrymaking, come in by yourself, in ragged clothes, and with this bag in your hand. Ask for nothing, except for the bag to be filled with food. I'll arrange things so that the bag will be no fuller, even if all the food and drink in this 7 regions was put into it. After a lot of food and drink has been thrown into the bag, he will ask, will your bag ever be full? You will say, no. Not unless a very rich and important man will get up and tread down the food in the bag and say, enough has been put in here. Then, said Rhiannon, I'll get Pwyll to go and tread on the food in the bag. And when he comes, turn the bag so this is his head over heels inside it, and then knot the laces. Now you'll need to have a loud horn hanging around your neck, When he has been tied inside the bag, sound your horn, and as a sign to your knights. When they hear the horn, they must attack the court." "My lord," said Pwyll, "it's high time I had your answer about what I've asked for." "Whatever is mine you can have entirely," said Pwyll. "Friend," said Rhiannon, for her part, "I've given this feast and the wedding preparations to the men of Dyfed, and the retinue of soldiers and the company here. I'll not allow them to be given to anyone else. But a year from tonight, a feast will have been prepared here for you, and for me, friend, so that you can marry me." "Very well," said Pwyll, and he returned to his country. Pwyll thusly did the same, returning to Dyfed, and Rhiannon's word stood. The year passed until it was time for the feast at the court of Hefydd the Old, when Pwyll, son of Clyd, came to the feast that had been prepared for him. He went to the court and was welcomed there. Pwyll, king of the other world, also came. He went to the orchard with 100 knights exactly as Rhiannon had instructed, and he had the bag with him. Pwyll put on ragged clothes and old shabby shoes, and when he heard merrymaking after the eating, he walked into the hall. When he reached the dais, he greeted Pwyll and his company of men and women. "God's blessing to you, and welcome," said Pwyll. "My lord," he said, "may God repay you. I am a man who has some business to do with you." "Welcome to your business," said Pwyll, "and if you ask for anything reasonable, you're most welcome to it." "My request is quite reasonable, my lord," he said. "I ask only out of need. What I'd like is to have this bag filled with food." "You're not asking for much," said Pwyll, "and you can have that gladly. Bring him food." And a large number of servants got up and began to fill the bag. But in spite of that, all was thrown into it. The bag was no fuller than it was to begin with. "Friend," said Pwyll, "will your bag ever be full?" "No, as God's my witness," he said, "never, in spite of all that's been thrown into it, unless a nobleman such as yourself, who owns lands and riches, will get up and tread the food into the bag, you see, with his own 2 feet, saying, 'Enough has been put in here.' And you, my fine man," said Rhiannon, "get up this instant." "Gladly," said Pwyll. He got up and put his 2 feet into the bag, and then Pwyll turned the bag so that Pwyll was head over heels inside it. He drew up the laces and knotted them, and then sounded his horn. And the company of his soldiers attacked the court and held all those men who had come with Pwyll and put them into chains. Pwyll cast off his ragged clothes and shabby shoes, and as each of his soldiers came into the hall, he gave the bag a good kick or a beating with a stick and asked, "What's in here?" "A badger," the others said. And as each soldier reached the hall, he asked, "Now what is this game you're playing?" "The game of Badger in the Bag," they would reply. And it was here that the game of Badger in the Bag was first played, supposedly. Now, Badger in the Bag is referenced in another of these tales that we've already examined. So maybe go back through the playlist and take a look at that. Badger in the Bag, a game invented in the Mabinogion first branch and played elsewhere. "My lord," said the man in the bag, "if you'd listen to me, killing me in a bag is not a worthy death for me." "My lord," said Hefydd the Old. Finally, Hefydd the Old is actually there. "He's telling the truth, and it's right that you listen to him. That is not a fitting death for him." "All right," said Pwyll. "I'll follow your advice as to what I should do with him." And then Rhiannon said, "I'll give you some advice. You're now in a position where it's your duty to satisfy the people and musicians who ask you and beg you for things. Let him take your place in the giving of gifts, and make him swear that he will never reclaim these gifts from you, nor avenge himself on you, that will be sufficient punishment for him, I think." "He can have all of that, I swear," said the man in the bag. "And I'll agree to that gladly," said Pwyll, "if it's the advice of Hefydd and Rhiannon." "That is our advice," they said. "And I agree to it," said Pwyll. "Now, who will stand witness for Pwyll?" "We'll stand witness until his own men are free," said Hefydd. Then Pwyll was set free from the bag, and his chief men were unchained. "Now, ask Pwyll for his witnesses," said Hefydd. "We know the men he ought to choose." And Hefydd counted the witnesses. "State your terms," said Pwyll. "Well, what Rhiannon has just said is good enough for me," said Pwyll. So the witnesses agreed to those terms. "Indeed, my lord," said Pwyll, "I am hurt. I've sustained great wounds. I must bathe them and have them dressed. I'll go, with your permission, and leave the nobleman here to respond on my behalf to all the people who petition you." "Fine," said Pwyll. "You do that." And then Pwyll went towards his kingdom. The hall was prepared for Pwyll and his company, and the company of the court of Hefydd the Old, and they all took their places at the tables. Each one sat in the same place that he was sitting in the year before. And Pwyll and Rhiannon went to their room and spent the night pleasantly. "My lord," said Rhiannon at dawn, "get up and distribute gifts to the musicians. Today, don't refuse anyone who asks for a gift." "I'll do that gladly," said Pwyll. "Today and for as long as the feast lasts." Pwyll got up and told his servants to call for silence so that he could invite the musicians and anyone else who wanted anything to come forward. He told the company that they were welcome to whatever they desired, and he was as good as his word. No one was refused anything for as long as the feast lasted. And when the feast came to an end, Pwyll said to Hefydd, "My lord, with your permission, I'll start back home for Dyfed tomorrow." "That's fine, dear boy," said Hefydd. "Godspeed you, and of course arrange for a time for Rhiannon to follow, naturally." "As God's my witness," said Pwyll, "we'll go from here together." "Is that what you want, my lord?" asked Hefydd. "Indeed it is," said Pwyll. But hopefully, not just a one-night stand, hopefully. The following day they rode for Dyfed and the court of Arberth, where a feast had been prepared for them. A gathering of important men and women from across the country met them there. Rhiannon allowed no one to leave without giving them a beautiful gift, either a brooch or a ring or precious gems. And they ruled the country happily for a year and another. But during the third year, people began to look unhappy and sad because they saw that their lord, whom they loved, their own king, had no heir. They asked Pwyll to talk with them and met him at Pwyll in Dyfed. "My lord," they said, "you're not as young as some of us, and we fear your wife cannot give you an heir. Take another wife so that you may have an heir. Take another wife so that you may have an heir. You will not last forever, after all. And though you may be content without an heir, we're not ready to tolerate that." "True enough," said Pwyll. "We won't be together forever, and accidents may happen. But leave the matter with me until the end of the year. We'll meet together 1 year from now, and I'll follow your advice." This arrangement with his people was accepted, presumably behind Rhiannon's back. Okay. However, before the time of the meeting, a son was born to Pwyll and Rhiannon in Arberth. On the night he was born, women were brought in to look after the baby and his mother, but those women fell asleep. Oh dear. And so did Rhiannon. It happened like this. There were 6 women there, and they kept watch for the first part of the night, but before midnight every one of them had fallen asleep. Towards daybreak they awoke. They looked into the cradle where they had placed the baby that night, but there was no sign of him. "Oh," said one of the women, "the baby's gone." What are we to do about it?" asked another. "What?" said the rest of them. They all began to panic, as you would. Suddenly, though, one of them, with an oddly calm demeanour, cried out, There's a hound outside who's just had some puppies. We'll kill some of the puppies and rub Rhiannon's face and hands with the blood. Then we'll throw their bones in front of her and swear it was her herself that killed the baby. She won't be able to argue against the 6 of us." They all agreed to this plan. When it was getting light, Rhiannon awoke and said, "Ah, women, where's the little one?" "My lady," they said, "don't ask us for the little one. We're black and blue all over after struggling with you through the night, and in truth, we've never seen such fighting spirit in any woman. But it was no good. You yourself have destroyed your son, and don't ask us about him." "Poor women," asked Rhiannon, "for the sake of God who knows all things, don't accuse me falsely. God who knows all things knows that you're wronging me. If you're afraid, I swear I'll defend you." "Indeed," they cried out in chorus, "we are not going to be wrong to shield someone else." "Poor women," Rhiannon said, "no wrong will come from telling the truth." But whatever she said, with words fair and pitiful, the women only gave her the same reply. Now it was the morning, and eventually Pwyll himself arose, along with the entire court and all of his soldiers. This disaster could not be hidden from them, or, crucially, from Pwyll himself. News spread across the country, and all the noblemen heard it. The noblemen met, and they sent messages to Pwyll, asking him to send away Rhiannon as a punishment for the murder of her baby, and crucially, his heir. "They have only one reason for asking me to send away my wife," said Pwyll to himself, "and that is if she has no children. But I know she's had a child, and I'll not send her away. If she's done wrong, she'll have to accept her proper punishment for it." Rhiannon summoned learned men from across the country. Wise men were beckoned to her side, and after a long conversation, she decided she would rather accept her punishment than argue with these women who were seemingly determined to frame her for murder. And the punishment imposed on her was that she was to stay in that court of Arberth for 7 years. There was a mounting block outside the gates of the court, and she had to sit there every day and tell her story to every passerby, if she thought they did not already know it. Then she had to offer to carry any visitors and pilgrims on her back, any who were willing, into the court. Thankfully, this was a rare thing for anyone to allow himself to be carried by Rhiannon. And this is how she spent part of this time. That's part 2 of this story. Rhiannon is an interesting character. Recently, she was mentioned in an interview I filmed with the author Michelle Franklin, where some people have come to the conclusion that Rhiannon represents a goddess, others that she's a mythical figure, or that she may be a conglomeration of different figures. Regardless, though, she is intriguing, and she has been very much wronged here, much like the sister of Bran the Blessed, Branwen herself, when she was married to the King of Ireland. It seems that Welsh queens and princesses are often wronged by someone. So we will return to this story before the year is out with part 3 and see what happens in the story of Pwyll, Rhiannon, and anyone else who may be about to enter the story. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time, do take care. Bye bye.